Hi, and welcome to another edition of Studio 411. I'm your host, Larry De Silva, and we have a terrific show lined up for you. We have a young lady joining us. Actually, she co-authored a book with a recent guest, Victoria Hallman. They wrote a book together called Hollywood Nights, or Hollywood Lights. See, it's hard because really the nights and lights could all be regardless of where you are. But Hollywood Lights, Nashville Nights. Two Hee Haw honeys dish life, love, Elvis, Buck, and good times in the cornfield. And joining us this time around, not Victoria, but Diana Goodman. Welcome, Diana.
Hi.
Oh, I didn't know she was an airline flight attendant as well. Diana, for those of you who don't remember, for those of you NFL football fans, Diana was a former Atlanta Falcons cheerleader. More importantly, you, I am sure, remember her from her many years on the Hee Haw television series, where she was one of the Hee Haw honeys. And the basis in large part of this book, besides talking about various points in her life, of course, is she is a former girlfriend of the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley. So we have a lot of stuff to cover. And Elvis, the cornfield, my goodness. And I asked you this off the air. Elvis, so I was told early on, I think before you got on the show, had been asked to do the show and did not. I have a funny feeling his manager, Colonel Tom Parker, might have had a say in that. What do you think?
Possibly. It might have exposed him to too many Americans.
I get. Oh yeah, you mean Colonel Tom or Elvis? Because I think nowadays, you know, the way people do it now, I think that only enhances your value. In those days, movie stars didn't mix with television, and I have a funny feeling that might have been why. But they say Elvis loved the show, and that was before you got on. He would have loved it even more.
I hope so.
Yeah. And speaking of which, Elvis had quite a few girlfriends in his life, and he actually had another Hee Haw lady who we'll talk about a little bit later, actress named Linda Thompson. And these two young ladies, I guess at one point met up on the show, and a lot of stories to be told there as well. But starting off, what made you put this book together? Obviously, you co-wrote it with Victoria Hallman, but what made you, after all these years, to share the story about your life and also your exciting times?
Well, over the years, people ask me about him, and it's hard to put it in a nutshell. You know, they'd just be sitting on the sofa going, "So how'd you meet Elvis?" Well, you can't really tell them in 5 minutes. But to try to hit the highlights, and then about 11 years ago, I had a couple of girlfriends, and they said, "You should write a book." And I thought, well, my experiences don't seem like they would make a book. You know, how many enough pages? So I started to write things down in what I call little chapters. I started to write stories about things I remembered, and then a couple of years after that, Victoria was talking to me about it as well and saying, "You should write a book about your relationship with Elvis." And I told her the same thing. I don't think I have enough. You know, I was thinking like Gone with the Wind size book. But it doesn't have to be that big. In fact, it's better if it's not so big. So then we started talking further about actually putting a project together. And she said, well, maybe I could write my personal experiences, and together we would have a book, a bigger, you know, size book other than a children's size book. So it's kind of how that came about.
There you go. Well, you could always write a children's book with Elvis figures and Elvis impersonators. You could have a whole little book catered to kids about what he meant to so many people through his music and through his career. I was talking to your buddy Erlene Mandrell a few days ago. She said to say hello, by the way, and she's doing a podcast now. And she brought up during our conversation about how, you know, do you ever like sometimes look back or almost kind of take a step back, not as you, but kind of looking within yourself and say, geez, remembering going back to when you were a young woman and saying, my God, I dated the king of rock and roll. I mean, that's anytime anybody, even that I mentioned you were going to be on the show, and they may not know your name at first, but then you mention Hee Haw, but then you say, oh, was a former Elvis Presley girlfriend, and right away, wow, all of a sudden they just stand up straight, like, as if you think, you had dated, I don't know. I don't know what to compare Elvis to. He's one of a kind. But you ever get that feeling?
Yeah, because after I got married, I spent the rest of my life trying to suppress all the guys that I had dated in the past, because you want to dwell on the man that you're with. And, we had kids and we were doing family. And then when I started to write the book, and I even told my husband, because he encouraged me to write it as well, and I said, it's hard because I have to go back there in my heart and my mind. I have to go back to those times that I've tried. Because I didn't even see any Elvis movies in like 33 years. I didn't do anything Elvis to stop, because he was so, he gets in your heart so deep. It's kind of like it takes a while to kind of get out that longing, because you want to long for the one you're with. So he said, oh, no big deal. So he was fine with everything I had to write. And then lately, some people have sent me some little music clips of some reminders that I remembered. And you can talk about your memories, but there's not a lot of pic proof. There's some, but when somebody produces something that kind of verifies one of your memories, or that you can show people, like the clip from the song where he actually sings, I got a woman way across Georgia, and I'm with him. And then last night somebody sent me the coolest picture that I'd never seen before in all these years, and it was me sitting in the area where I usually sat while he sang that song, and I'm holding his sunglasses, and my heart just kind of jumped in my throat, because their memories really become more vivid. And then I do think about this man is as relevant today as he was then, and he just won a medal, the presidential medal, and there's constantly documentaries and new things that people are coming out with about him. So yeah, it's very surreal when I think about it now, and I look back, I'm like, I should have savored every second instead of every minute.
We actually have Diana sent us this photo, which she said literally got last night. If we can get a shot of that. That's a fan sent her that image, and I think that's pretty impressive there, if we can get a shot of that. That's her. Where was that? Is that in Uniondale, Long Island, that shot at one of his concerts?
Yes,
yeah.
Uniondale.
And we suspect those two gentlemen that are on the left, one I think is his half-brother, Mr. Stanley. Was it Rick Stanley?
On the stage?
Yeah, there's two gentlemen,
so.
yeah.
And the one standing beside me, I think that's maybe David.
Yeah, but no, the gentleman off to the left, I think that's Elvis's half-brother. But I think that's pretty cool. How ironic that she sends me that this morning, and I said, wow, you just got that last night. Never knew that photo existed, and there's...
I've never seen it. Oh, it just made my heart happy. And the guy's name is George. I don't know who he is, but he wouldn't let me share it until just a little while ago. He gave me permission, because you're the only one that's seen it besides me and the guy.
We have a coup here on Studio 411. There you go. That's great. We love it. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Where were you born?
I was born in a little town called Alma, Georgia. And it's not far from Waycross, Georgia.
There you go.
Which the song, I Got a Woman, Waycross, Georgia. And then my family moved to Griffin, Georgia, and then eventually Forest Park, Georgia. which is where I grew up and where I am right now, visiting my brother.
You're visiting your brother, yeah. So basically, you've been a Georgia girl all your life. And where'd you go to college? Because I know you were a cheerleader in college.
Georgia State University.
There you go. There you go.
Which is right downtown Atlanta.
Yeah. And then from there, at one point, you were a cheerleader for the Atlanta Falcons football team. We have a shot of you back in the day. I think she was all of 9 when this photo was taken. Let's see. Do we have that? There you go.
Definitely. Look what we had on. Have things not changed? Look at our outfit.
No, I can only see that it's a black and white shot. It looks like the old Falcon jersey, I think, unless that's a college shot. But that's Diana as a very young girl for sure. But yeah, so I mean, you had things going on. What did you want to be when you grew up? Well, let's say when you were 9, 13, going into those teenage years. What did you aspire to be when you were a kid growing up?
As far back as I could remember, I just wanted to act. I wanted to be in front of people, on stage, and television. Even though I longed for that, it was so far-fetched. I really didn't, I was afraid to desire that much. But I love to do things on stage. I was in drama at school, entered tons of pageants, cheerlead, everything that would put you on stage because I just wanted to entertain. And I had a little knack for comedy, and I used the kind of blonde thing and, to get laughs. And so that's kind of what I wanted to be. Although I went to college and I studied special ed, and that's what I did in high school during my study hall time and free periods. I tutored the football players, and I taught a special ed class, or I assisted. I was too young to be the teacher, but I assisted in special ed. And then, so my mom said, well, that's what you're doing, and you seem to enjoy it, so maybe that's what you should major in, because I couldn't think of anything else. And so that's what I did for a couple of years, and then the longing to do more in television or stage or movies just kind of got the best of that. So I left college after about 3 years and decided just to see what I could find.
There you go. Oh, I didn't know you didn't finish college. You ever think of going back?
No.
You could go and become. You could set a Guinness record. You would be like the middle-aged cheerleader of all time. I can see.
I like that middle-aged part, although I'm way past that. Now, later I did go back to college and got my real estate. Took a real estate course, and then I took a course in interior design. And then when we had kids, I started to homeschool. So that was a learning experience. I think I learned more homeschooling my boys than I did when I was in school, because I had to relearn a lot of stuff. And I was like, oh, where was I when they taught that day? And math and science. Because, and you can get extra credit by helping the teacher do stuff like grade papers. So you might get a little bump in your grade for something that had nothing to do with science. Mm-hmm. So I actually got a good grade. I wasn't real good at it. So I had to farm that out.
There you go. There you go. I left one thing out, too, when I did the introduction. 2 things, actually. The book published by our friends at Bear Manor Media, www.bearmanormedia.com for more information. And as far as Diana goes, I forgot that she was also a pageant winner. She's Miss Georgia. Miss Georgia, yeah, that's impressive. Yeah, there you go. Now I get it. I thought you were doing like a British thing. I forgot. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, you were Miss Georgia. Okay, I thought you were.
I didn't wave like that. I did the whole hey.
I thought you wanted to be the next Meghan Markle when you opened up with that wave. I'm sorry. I totally forgot. Yeah, you were a beauty pageant, and that opened up a lot of doors too early on. Speaking of opening doors, this lady's got a lot of moxie. I got to tell you. In the book, it talks about. 1975, the summer, you had, I believe at that point you were the reigning Miss Georgia, and you're out and visiting Graceland over in Tennessee, and she just goes up to the door, or she just goes up to the front gate and pushes the button or knocks on the gate, I don't know. And long story short, she actually gets into Graceland, while Elvis is taking a nap. I mean, I'm telling you, try doing that now. I think the dogs would come after you. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Graceland was a lot calmer in those days.
Well, actually, I was in Memphis on a job assignment through the pageant, and I honestly didn't even think about Elvis lived there. I was there to work. I had a day in between these two things, and I called a cab to go to the mall, because what do you do on your day off? You go shopping. And so on the way to the mall, the cabbie said, well, what are you doing here? A little chit-chat. He said, well, have you ever been to Graceland? I said, no. And he said, did you know Elvis lives here in Memphis? And I said, I might have known, but I'm not thinking about it. And he said, we're going to pass there, so you'll be able to see the house. I said, okay. So as we passed, he pulled over so we could stop, and I'm looking out the window, and he said, do you want to get out and walk up to the gate? I said, well, I guess. But I didn't know what I was going to do at the gate. But I got out of the car, walked up to the gate, and I'm standing there, and a guy from the little guard shack on the inside of the gate motions for me to come over. He kind of says, hey, come here. So I walked over, and he asked me my name, and he told me he was Uncle Vester. And he said, well, what are you doing here in Memphis? And I told him I was modeling, and he said, well, would you like to come in and in the gate, see the grounds? I'm like, sure. And the cabbie's like, I'll see you later. So he opened the gate, I walked in, and a few minutes, a golf cart comes down from the house with two guys in it, and they said, hey, do you want to go up and see the house? And I said, well, is Elvis there? And they're like, no, he's not home. And I thought, well, why do I want to see somebody's house? They're not even there, but okay, I'm already this far. So they drove me up to the house, showed me all around, and then took me into the jungle room, and we sat and visited, and Lisa Marie was there. And after a while I thought, wait, his daughter's here, but he's not? So eventually, when we got to this one area where it went up the steps, they said, we can't go up there right now because Elvis is taking a nap. And I'm like, oh, wow, so he is home, and why is he not coming? I don't know. So we visited for a while, and then one of the bodyguards asked if I wanted him to take me back to my hotel since the cab had long gone. It's too late to shop. And I said, sure. So I think it was Dave Hebler, and on the way back, he asked if he said Elvis wanted to know if I wanted to go to the movies later. And I said, well, I hadn't even met Elvis. I mean, how does he know to ask me to go anywhere? And he said, well, he told me to ask you. And I said, well, sure. So they came about 11 o'clock and picked me up at my hotel. And we went to the Memphian and watched movies all night long.
But that's because Elvis had a security system, so he was looking at you, and he woke up from that nap because Uncle Vester, I think that runs in the family. Uncle Vester had an eye for talent. Let me tell you.
Well, later, Elvis told me that he saw me on the closed-circuit camera at the gate, and he told them to see who I was and bring me in and kind of get a feel for if I was some crazy person or not. And so it was a little bit of, I guess, a trial run. And so then after the movies, once again, I think it was Dave, he took me back to my hotel, and on the way, we stopped for coffee, and he said Elvis wanted to know my phone number and address. He'd like to call me and take me out. And I thought, well, why didn't he ask me before? We were just in the movie. But anyway, And at one time I thought, I wonder if Dave wants my number or does Elvis, but
I think everybody there wanted your number. That's what I think. I think Uncle Vester wanted your number too. And if his daddy Vernon was around, I think he would have asked for the number too. So a lot of numbers going around there. No, it's very interesting. Now,
it was fun. It was so cool because nobody really introduced me to Elvis. I didn't meet him at a show. It was just so unique that today when I think about it, I'm more flattered that he kind of pursued a meeting with me. You know, that's very, feels really cool.
I think it's the coolest thing that you even got in the place, on the grounds, in the house. I mean, that is just beyond belief. Let me tell you. Now,
People have said that it was like a planned thing. People have tried to say that Elvis hired the cabbie to find girls. I mean, all kind of stories. People are reluctant to believe that it just happened the way it did.
That's just sour grapes on the part of those people. Anyway, Diana Goodman joining us for the hour here on Studio 411. The book Hollywood Lights, Nashville Nights, co-authored with our friend Victoria Hallman, also of Hee Haw fame. Two Hee Haw honeys, Dishin' Life, Love Elvis, Buck, as in Buck Owens, and Good Times in the Cornfield, published by Bear Manor Media. Now, shortly after that, you wound up going to California, and there was an interesting blurb in there. We have a photo of this gentleman who I guess you never met, but a friend of yours, Paulette, was living or dating singer B.J. Thomas, who I believe, and I did look for this, I believe knew Elvis, was good friends with him for a time. And I just, at that point, my research tells me I think B.J. was going through some dependency issues of his own. And was separated from his wife, who he's still married to today, and was for a time with your friend. And I just thought to myself, wouldn't that have been a heck of a double date? You and Elvis and your friend Paulette and B.J. Thomas. That would have lit up the town, huh?
And we talked about that because when I got out there, you know, I had met him, gone to the movies, and Paulette is actually from here. We went to high school together. And she moved to California about the time I did, and she was a Playboy bunny for a while in one of the clubs in California. I guess the one in L.A. And I think that's how she met. No, she met BJ at like a charity event, something like that. But we talked about all getting together when he called, and you know, it'd been a couple of weeks and he hadn't called, so I was like, he's probably not going to call. But yeah, I went out to see her, and she is now her mom, became a nurse, and raised two kids.
Oh, so you're still friends with Paulette?
Oh yeah, we see each other a lot.
Interesting, yeah. And but that's what my research tells me, is that he was going through some issues. He had separated from his wife, and at that point he was going through a rough patch that he came out of, became a Christian, and credits that and his wife as well with kind of saving his life. Otherwise, I think he certainly would not have been around much longer. At least even he discusses it that way in you know, some books and things that I've read.
They were good for each other for the time. You know, they needed what the need was, and having a friend and everything for that moment. And then, you know, I think they both knew that they needed to grow and to make changes, and I'm glad that BJ is in a good place. And Paulette, too. Yeah. All of us. We all kind of grew up.
Tell me, when you were in California, I hear more and more, you know, the 70s, you know, was an interesting time in Los Angeles, more so than just the state of California, Los Angeles area. During your times there, did you get the impression to, you know, kind of leave you with a negative image of Los Angeles, or did you just found it to just be a regular old big city?
Before I actually moved out there?
At any point that you were out there, yeah, even the beginning, or even when you lived there later on.
Well, when I went out to visit Paulette and to try to see I was thinking I was going to go scope out a place to live. I was going to get a job just like that. And then you run into people who have these unique lifestyles and kind of a little progressive in a lot of ways. And then, here I'm from where I'm from in small town Georgia. And then you go out there and there's just all this money and a lot of drugs and alcohol and a lot of lifestyle that were totally unfamiliar to me. And so it was a little bit scary there. And I almost got the idea that that's just how it was in the whole state. Like, this is how California and show business and all that is. And so I came home to kind of regroup. And so when I moved back out there for good, I realized that it's not that way. Certain groups of people and certain situations are different. But you can make friends and associates who have a similar belief system and lifestyle that you do. Mm-hmm. So it's not everybody and everything, but very prevalent in show business, I guess.
Yeah, like any big city, you have to be street savvy enough to know where you're going and hang out with not with the wrong crowd, because that can lead you to
and
very bad.
Elvis, he had talked to me about what I wanted to do, and I told him I wanted to be in show business. I wanted to be on television or stage. And he's like, oh, no, you shouldn't do that. And it wasn't because he was against anybody furthering their desire, but he said, that place will chew you up and spit you out. You have you're too nice. I don't think you could make it out there not because of lack of ability, but your heart would be broken, or your spirit. And then he said, what if we date for a while? How are you going to have a career and I'm going to have one, and we're never going to see each other? So he wasn't, when people or articles try to write things like he was demanding, or that's not how he was at all. He was rational about the logistics of a relationship. If we want to be together, one of us got to not work. He had the career going on. If you notice, most of the girls who got involved with didn't have anything happening because they were young, or they hadn't had a chance to get out there and develop, or get a life going on outside of him in college or something. And so it was the way he put it to me was, if we want to be together, then we both can't be doing something else. So obviously I had no problem in just kind of laying my desires aside. My desire for him outweighed that for a minute.
You think Elvis, not that different from most men, but do you think Elvis, because of affluence and success, and liked his ladies a certain way, or just kind of wanted things his way or the highway? Would that be stretching it too far? Or?
Well, to say that he didn't have expectations would not be accurate. And I was 35 years old before I got married, so I had a lot of relationships. I had a chance to date a lot of people. And everybody has expectations. And even when I got married, we had to define the roles. Who's going to do what? Somebody's going to have the kids. It's going to be me because I'm the one. Or somebody's going to have to, do this part at the house. Or he's going to install the toilet. Or, and I'm going to maybe put the kids to bed. But there are expectations of what are you going to do? What am I going to do? And compromise. And he was, especially when he was working, he was very professional in business. He did want everything to go like it was supposed to when he was on the road, when he was working. Because, it was very important. He came alive when he got on stage, and everything had to be just right. And if anything fell apart, we were up all night long trying to fix it with whoever it fell apart with, because it meant that much to him in that regard. I think when he was at home, he wasn't quite as, the expectations weren't quite as heavy, I guess.
During your time with him, and of course, this is like a mere 2 year, almost 2 years before his untimely passing. I get from reading the book. I mean, obviously, this was a man who, for many reasons, which I don't think any of us have all the answers or can even imagine. You talk in the book. Obviously, there was already pill popping, mysterious shots being, administered by, some of the. Staff or lackeys, depending on what term you want to use, that the hangers-on at times that surround famous people like that. I'm reminded of people like Michael Jackson and many others that, again, they get so big that, I mean, you had almost like a mini spat with him, or he did with you, really, where you wanted him to go shopping, and like so many of these other well-known people, they just, can't go out in public. I mean, they're almost isolated from reality. I think you saw a lot of different sides of Elvis that the normal people had no idea of.
It helped me understand him a lot more. When you step into his world, then you can understand a little bit about how things can happen, and you end up at a place you didn't plan to be. And he didn't like pop pills. If he took something, it was in the morning when it's time to get up, or at night to go to bed. There wasn't like an all-day taking pills. He didn't drink alcohol. I mean, we drank diet soda. He had gotten to a place, and so had the guys, that they felt in their heart this was what he needed. And at that time, there was not a lot of studies about what things do to you and combining drugs. And, now the pharmacy knows everything you take. And if you try to get a prescription for something that's not compatible, it'll pop up. You'll get a red flag. Well, they didn't have any of that then. And, doctors wrote prescriptions for whatever you told them you wanted. And when he had a rigorous schedule, and we would fly somewhere, get there at 2 a.m, he'd have to be up at 8 and, either on the roof getting some sun to get a little color, or rehearsal, and then have a show, a matinee. And I believe they really came to believe in their hearts that they were doing what was best for Elvis's career and his life. And I don't know if they thought far enough about it to consider what it might be doing to him as a person. Although, before that, a lot of them had started to lay aside those things. Because, for a while, they were all doing everything together. They were on the road, driving, and keeping all kind of hours. But they had started to lay aside some of those things, some of the partying. They got married, people had kids. But Elvis maintained all those things, except for it was regimented. It wasn't like, let's get up and party. It was, okay, we have to get up at this time, so you have to take this at this time. You've got to go to sleep at this time. And, today people take all kind of odds and ends for every emotional upset or weight gain, weight loss, sleep issues. So I'm not saying it's the best thing, but when people kind of point back at him for thinking that he was doing the right thing, and then today, people are still doing the same thing, and they're not even in show business.
Yeah, it reminds me of something my mother used to say. Like you would see a kid or something, or a baby, and they would say, "Oh, looks like the mother, or looks like the father." I'm always reminded because obviously his dad Vernon lived a very long time, and actually just to cut away quick, even appeared on an episode of Hee Haw after Elvis passed away.
Yeah.
But to pass at age 42, I mean, clearly. We know the stories. He had a physician that, again, I go back to people like Michael Jackson, and I'm sure I'm forgetting others. My point being is that affluence breeds not only this isolationism, but it also breeds bad habits, whether they're regimented or not. to die at that young age, and also, again, to go back to like what my mom would say, so-and-so looks like so-and-so. Well, who was it? Well, his mother Gladys, and she died probably about the same age during the beginning of his career, and it's very clear that he, lamented that for a long time, troubled him a lot. And I just think, regardless, not to cast sadness on your time, it's great that you had good memories with him, but clearly this is an individual that not only passed way too young, but also just was on a collision course with disaster. I mean, the way his eating habits, I mean, you look at some of the later photos, I mean, it doesn't even look like the same person that we remember from the 50s and 60s by the time the mid-70s came.
Well, he had put on some weight, mostly around the tummy. His face was a little puffy from, now we know a lot of carbs and a lot of salt and sugar caused that. But he wasn't like fat all over. It was just, he looked like he had a little beer belly, and he didn't even drink beer.
Yeah.
So, and, some of the costumes he wore enhanced some of the not as good features and everything, but he still was Elvis.
Oh,
he
yeah.
still had it going on.
Diana Goodman joining us for the hour here on Studio 411. The book Hollywood Lights, Nashville Nights, co-authored with her friend and mine, Victoria Hallman, published by Bear Manor Media. For more information, www.bearmanormedia.com. In the remaining time we have left, we'll cover a few things quickly. You knew, I don't know, dated would be the right word, but you knew Rick Nelson. We have a shot of Rick in his later years. There's another example. The only difference with Rick was he was raised in, Ozzie and Harriet, for those old enough to remember his mom, dad, and brother, et cetera, et cetera. Had a family young, I believe it was 3 or 4 kids, and then towards the end of his life there was all this speculation of perhaps some drugs and some other things going on, maybe midlife crisis. So even though he was killed in a plane crash, and there's all sorts of rumors regarding what might have happened on that flight, which we'll never know. But again, another gentleman that seemed to have demons or troubles in his life when you knew him, because you talk about clearly you kind of almost backed away. You didn't really want to get involved with that.
Not a lot. Because when I met him at the airport. I'd flown to Houston, Texas to visit my sister and brother-in-law. And we were at baggage claim getting my stuff. And there was this group of guys standing near us. And I thought, that guy sure does look familiar. And then we kind of caught each other's glance, and he smiled, and they walked over to us and started talking. And he said his name was Ricky Nelson. And so we talked, and then we all exchanged phone numbers, and he invited us. He was doing a show that night. He was opening for Roy Orbison. And it was the coolest memory, because I had never seen Roy Orbison in person. And so we went with Ricky to the concert, and, he got us front row seats. And we got to see Roy and him, and then later we all went out, and then he had a bunch of people over to his suite. We just stayed up partying all night long, and I didn't see a sign of drugs or anything. We were just, everybody's just drinking. And then I saw him a few more times in California, and then, I saw a little bit, like Quaalude. I didn't see anything big, but that was the first. I didn't see that in the beginning, but about a year later is when I kind of saw that, and then he died not real long after that. So, yeah, in that plane crash, that was really sad. He was really, really, really nice person.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And you look back at his career, a lot of people sometimes forget about, the impact Rick Nelson had, young man. In the late 50s.
I know, so cute.
And
so nice, just so cute.
And then, sprung to success on the Ozzie and Harriet show, Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, as they called it. And again, hit after hit. That practically rivals Elvis. It's amazing. Another gentleman you hung out with a little bit, she really picks them. I got to tell you, astronaut Buzz Aldrin, who, of course, from the Apollo 11, the second man to walk on the moon. So, he, my God, a few years back in his late 70s on Dancing with the Stars. I mean, so interesting gentleman, a colonel in the military, I believe, as well as an astronaut. And you knew him, interesting gentleman.
He was. I met him. I was in a show in Atlantic City. They had just opened a Caesars there, and they I auditioned for a show that was for like bus tours, kind of a family-oriented play. And I sang this song, like a goofy kind of song, but my job was to pick a man out of the audience and bring him on stage and sing to him. And it was supposed to be a shorter man, like with gray hair, an older man, so that we would kind of tower over. And then I would sing this song to him and, get a lot of laughs. Well, on this particular night, the producer came over. In fact, one of the producers was Bernie Wayne. Do you remember him?
No.
He wrote There She Is, Miss America and Blue Velvet. But anyway, they came to me and they said, Diana, there's a man in the audience. We want you to pick him to bring him up to sing the song to. And his name is Buzz Aldrin. And I said, oh, well, okay. And, I mean, he was not old and short. He was very handsome and still young and tall and dashing. And so I called him up, and when he came on stage, of course, the crowd went wild. And we sang Fly Me to the Moon instead of my normal ditty. And then he waited after the show, and we went to dinner and exchanged phone numbers. So then when I got back to California, I called him up, and we went out a few times. And, he was a little older than I was, and he was in a different place in life. He had been an alcoholic, and he shared this with me. He's written books about it. So he was a teetotaler. He didn't really even like to go anywhere where they had alcohol. He worked really hard on keeping his life on the right path. And me, on the other hand, this was 1980, and I was 29, I guess, and a free spirit, kicking my heels up. But he told me about how after he walked on the moon and the publicity, and his life just changed so drastically. It was just like a cocktail party a minute. And there was just a lot of opportunities to drink, and he drank more, and next thing you know, he realized he was overdoing it. And so he went to AA and then straightened his life up, and has been just sober ever since, and written books, and just a very interesting man. And he was just so mature, so solid, and so stable that's not where I was. I was, still looking to go to the parties to be seen in case there was, you're trying to build yourself and your career. And but he was, when I was watching the president's speech and he introduced him on the front row, I'm like, oh my gosh, I know him.
Another guy, and actually this was a few years during the time I think you were dating Elvis. We have a shot of you on the movie set. I think the film was Gator with Burt Reynolds, who passed away in 2018. And nice man. Tell us any quick story about Burt.
Very nice. During the Miss Georgia time, I had to go to Savannah. And I had an aunt and uncle that lived there as well. Took my grandmother with me, and I found out Burt was in town filming. And so I thought, I'm just going to go out to the set. And I did. I found out where he was. I went to the set, and I stood there, and somebody working on the behind the scenes came over and talked to me, and I said, I would like to meet Burt Reynolds. I want to be in this movie. And so in a little while, they took me over there, and Burt said, so you want to be in my movie? I said, yes. He said, okay. So he gave me some extra work on that one. So the first thing I had ever done in front of the camera for TV or movies. He gave me my first opportunity. And then he also let me be in Smokey and the Bandit. Had a few scenes in there. And even though it's really small, when you look at the movie, you work several days. So the opportunity to work around people and to make money. And even though it was just small things, and then I really got the bug. I mean, I was ready. I thought, I got to go where they hire not just the extras. You know, and when they come to Georgia to do a movie, they've already got their big people with them. So anyway, he was he helped a lot of people. You know, he was a good guy, down to earth, and a lot of fun. Let me tag along to stuff.
This lady, like wherever she goes, she walks up to any door and she gets opportunities. Now, a girl or a guy in that business, show business, you got to take the work when it comes. And I guess at one point you got to meet Clint Eastwood, but actually we have a shot of Clint, but that's not Diana behind that. That's from one of Clint's movies, I believe. One of his pictures where he was with an orangutan. But anyway, Diana met him by delivering some sort of check or whatever, dressed in a monkey suit. So again, and how did he find out that there was a girl under that monkey suit?
Well, in between jobs, I would work for a party, like an event company, delivering telegrams. I was sometimes in a mermaid and a couple of times in a gorilla suit. And this one day, the guy said, okay, I've got a telegram I want you to take to Mr. Chow restaurant in Beverly Hills. And you meet me there, and I'll have your costume. And so when I got there, he had this gorilla suit. And I'm like, really? You know, I moved all the way to California. And, you know, I work hard to try to take care of myself, and I'm going to wear a gorilla suit. And he said, yes, you are. And you're going to hand this check for $7 million to Clint Eastwood. He is in a private room and with a group of executives from Warner Bros. And this is his little, like, bonus check. It wasn't even his commission or his pay. This was just like a little perk they were giving him. So I had to go in the room, dance around, and make all these gorilla noises. And at that point, I was, praise the Lord, I'm covered up, acting like this.
If Clint only knew, if Clint only knew, he would have said, "Get rid of the gorilla suit, but keep dancing, keep dancing." Oh, funny.
Well, eventually, they were trying to guess who was in the suit. They thought it was one of the guys from the office, and they kept saying, "Okay, whatever, Harry, whatever your name was," and they said, "All right, you know, let's see who's under there." And so I took the gorilla head off, and they were quite surprised that it was a girl underneath. And Clint invited me to change clothes and come back and have lunch with them and hang out. I mean, you know, finish their meeting and just so that's how I met him.
Interesting. Diana Goodman in the remaining moments we have here on Studio 411. The book Hollywood Lights, Nashville Nights, Bear Manor Media, bearmanormedia.com, co-written with Victoria Hallman. There was something here that I don't even know if you remember. There was you talk in the book about getting a call from Sam Lovello, who was the creator and mastermind behind the Hee Haw series. And I don't even know if you know that the call and the eventual interview was set up by a gentleman you had met named Steve Binder. And for those who don't remember, I'm not even sure if Diana knows this, and just, wow, I said, I know that name. He was the director of many, many television specials, also the famous film, The Tammy Movie, which showcased a whole bunch of musical talent back in the mid-'60s, and also was the producer-director, possibly, of Elvis's '68 comeback special. And I just thought, you know, talk about coincidence. I mean, that's very bizarre. So in other words, Elvis by that time is already gone. And here's almost like a guardian angel in Steve Binder, who knew Elvis well. And next thing you know, because of him, you know, calling Sam, you wind up getting the job on Hee Haw.
Yeah, because when I met Steve, he didn't know anything about me except for I was from the South. He knew that because I carried that heavy accent with me to California. And we met at the corner at the car garage where I'd taken my car to get it fixed, and he was picking his up, and we're at this traffic light. He's about to leave, and you're kind of by somebody, and you just start talking. And then later, he told me he had produced a show with Elvis, but I didn't recall. I wasn't really listening that close about that part. And then a few years ago, I realized it was that same Steve Bender that, and he still didn't connect me with Elvis when he gave me his card and called the Hee Haw folks and asked them if they would interview me for if they're hiring or future reference or anything like that. And so then later on, he found out, he put those pieces together about me. And then when I read for Sam Lovello and the writers, and actually Frank Papillot and John Ellsworth started the show, I read for all them. And I read the part of Linda Thompson and Marianne Rogers. They were both going to have a baby, and the producers didn't know if they might not want to come back to the show. So they said, you can read their part, and then, but we're not hiring right now, but we'll keep you on file and as a favor to Steve, So a couple of weeks after that, I had gone to Las Vegas on a different interview that supposedly was for a billboard for the Sands Hotel. And there was about 20 girls. They flew out for this interview. We all were on the same flight. And when we got there, they kind of, told us how we were going to go in for the interview, and everybody gets set up. And when I got in, the man was just looking for some new wives. It wasn't even a billboard or anything like that.
Oil magnet. I'm going to stop you there. We've got only a couple of seconds left. I want to go to a shot of the Hee Haw Honeys. One of the other Elvis girlfriends there, I believe Linda Thompson, is on the far right. And then we've got Diana on the left side standing up, along with Lula Roman, Victoria, Earlene. Oh my goodness, all the gals.
All your friends.
All my pals. Yeah, I'm still waiting for that invite to Nashville. Let me tell you. Anyway,
Charlie's Angels on steroids there.
so much more to talk about. I'm telling you, it's a terrific book. Even the second and third time around, Diana Goodman and Victoria Hallman co-authored this book, Hollywood Lights, Nashville Nights, Two Hee Haw Honeys Dish Life, Love, Elvis, Buck, and Good Times in the Cornfield. And again, it's terrific, and we definitely want to have you back on to talk, because we barely scratched the surface of Elvis and all those good times. And I can't thank you enough for taking time out to be with us today.
Thank you, Larry.
All right, you hang it. Thank you. You hang in there with us, and we thank you for joining us on this episode of Studio 411. Larry DeSilva is my name. We look forward to seeing you again next time. Take care.